Formula One on 5 Live.
Welcome to Zandvoort in the Netherlands, where we are moments away from the start of qualifying for the Dutch Grand Prix. And this old school circuit, the Zandvoort circuit, is tricky at the best of times. It challenges the drivers, but no more so than today. In the final practice session a little earlier on, we had torrential downpours. Now the sun is shining, but it is very, very wet on the ground, and it's wet out on track as well. So it's going to be an interesting challenge for the drivers this next 60 minutes. We're excited to find out who's going to start on pole position, and you'd have to say he's not just the fans' favourite, he is the favourite to take both pole position and the win this weekend. Max Verstappen, your reigning world champion, looking to take back-to-back poles here and back-to-back wins. That would be 3 poles and 3 wins on home soil. And let me tell you, the grandstands here are packed. They've been packed for the last couple of days. It's a sea of orange. All the fans here pretty much cheering on Max Verstappen, all wearing papaya-coloured shirts. So perhaps it's for McLaren, but I think it's for Max Verstappen. I'm Rosanna Tennant, and I'm down in the pit lane, and up in the commentary box, it's our lead commentator, Harry Benjamin, W Series driver, Alice Powell, and the BBC's chief F1 writer, Andrew Benson. We've got a fine team to talk you through the next 60 minutes. And Harry, we've got to say that it's surely Max Verstappen who is the favourite. He was a little bit uncomfortable with a few things they tried out yesterday in practice, but it seems after FP3 he is the man to beat yet again.
Yep. Come rain or shine, quite literally, Max Verstappen will probably end up at the top of the timing screens come the end of qualifying. I mean, that will please the fans, as you've alluded to. The Supermax chants are in full flow. It's a sea of orange in the grandstands. But I don't think we've seen the last of the rain at the moment. I think it's eased off ever so slightly, but there is a big old shower coming in from the North Sea that may well meet us in time during this qualifying session. But I don't think that's going to put a damper on Verstappen getting pole position.
No, and I don't think you can put a dampener on the spirits around the track, I have to say. The Dutch fans have been on their feet all the time. This is a special track. We are just by the seaside, by the North Sea. Sand blows in on dry days. On wet days, it's sort of sea fog, it's mist, it's lots of clouds, as Harry was talking about. Alice, you've raced here. You know what it's like, this track, and we've seen some drivers really struggle with it. We've, in fact, lost Daniel Ricciardo this weekend to a hand injury because he couldn't get it right. He'd broken a bone in his hand, and several drivers having some trouble, especially in the wet conditions. How's it going to be now, given that it's not actually raining, but it's so damp out there for the drivers?
Yeah, we had a Formula 2 race prior to qualifying, which was actually red flagged in the end because the heavens did absolutely open, and there was a lot of standing water, Rosanna. So hopefully that shower that is moving our direction it's not going to spoil this qualifying party. But we saw a lot of drivers, as you mentioned, struggling. Max Verstappen, even on the exit of turn 3, nearly losing control of his Red Bull. Charles Leclerc going off, I think it was about 3 or 4 times down into turn 1, and saying it's so tricky under braking into turn 1 because it's so bumpy and also very slippy as well. So the crowd are still full of energy. The drivers are starting to queue in the pit lane because they know the sun is out, and this is going to be a really important time to get out on track, get an assessment of what the conditions are like. But I can guarantee if you get no more rain in the next 10 to 20 minutes, it's going to be these final moments of Q1 where we will see the time start to tumble, and we may see some people miss out into that top 15 spot.
And of course it's all about timing, isn't it? Just making sure you're out at the right time, on the right tyre as the track perhaps dries up. It's that crossover point, isn't it, Andrew? But just going back over the sort of course of the weekend, suddenly everyone was thinking, hang on a second, McLaren could be pole potential here. But I know you've been looking much more closely at the data, and I think you perhaps think that Red Bull have always been right at the top, or at least Max Verstappen has, despite what perhaps some of the timings were telling us.
Well, you don't need to be a Formula 1 expert to have Max Verstappen as your favourite for anything these days, Rosanna. But you know what? I think McLaren, they might actually threaten him. Even on Thursday, Lando Norris was saying, we might be able to challenge Max for pole at a couple of races. And I think he was referring to this weekend. And they've looked quick all weekend. They looked quick in the wet this morning and dry yesterday. So don't rule McLaren out for pole.
Oh, there we go. And that's why we have an expert in the box like yourself, Andrew. That's what we like to hear. So lots of potential storylines bubbling under the surface this weekend. We're getting ready to find out who will start on pole position for tomorrow's Dutch Grand Prix. The fans are here. They are ready to see something special. We've had red flags already a lot this weekend. Jenny Gow mentioned it earlier on, saying that she thinks there are going to be more red flags in this session. Of course, that would really hamper some people, and we could see some big scalps early on, and that might not just be because of the weather. Guys, I'm going to hand it up to you because I know there's going to be lots of action to talk about. Harry, it's all yours.
Thank you very much, Rosanna Tennant. And we are underway for Q1, the first part of qualifying. 18 minutes long, already down to 17 minutes and 18 seconds. And it's the two Williamses that are out first of all. Alex Albon and Logan Sargent take to the track. And we are looking to eliminate the bottom 5 drivers from this session. So, Alice Powell, who's at risk? Because in the practice session, we've had 2 Hasses both finding the walls. We've had an Alfa Romeo getting beached. We've had a McLaren that's lost a whole session after going into the wall in the form of Oscar Piastri. We've got Liam Lawson, who is being thrown in the deep end in an Alfa Tauri, replacing Daniel Ricciardo. So there are a lot of drivers that are a bit on the back foot going into this qualifying session.
Yeah, there are. I think Lawson is the main one that's on the back foot. This is having to jump in for Daniel Ricciardo, his first experience of driving a Formula 1 qualifying session in tricky conditions on a very tricky track as well. And there's still a lot of standing water out there, but you need to be there at the end of this qualifying session. So if you're going to throw it off at the start, you're going to make a mistake at the start of this session, that is going to be pretty much your session over. The track, if we don't get the rain in the next 16 minutes, the end of that session is going to be the best. And we can actually see a little bit of steam coming off the track as it's starting to dry already.
Also, Alice, we just watched Max Verstappen coming out of the pits, and at the first and second corners he had big twitches on the car. It just goes to show how treacherous conditions are out there at the moment.
This is the sound of George Russell embarking on his first flying lap, approaching turn 3. Hugenholtz, the left-hander, a 19-degree banked corner. He's taking it rather tensively. You can hear him trying to get on the throttle, and there's a little bit of a squirt from the engine as he manages to power through 4, 5 and 6, which gets quite tight, and concertina's up, but he's found himself some decent traffic at the moment, so nobody in front of him. Everybody that is out there right now is on the intermediate tyre because it is very wet still on the track. We'll see how quickly, as Alice says, that is able to dry up before we may well get another spots of rain coming down. But 15 minutes left of this first of 3 qualifying sessions to set our grid for Sunday's Grand Prix. Logan Sargent is also looking rather pacey at the moment in the middle sector, setting the times alight. And Alex Albon is the first time on the board with a 1:31.3 for the Williams.
The thing is with sessions like this, Harry, is that you'll go out like George Russell and the majority of the field are doing now. You'll go out, you'll do your first few runs, then you'll box, you'll come in, but then the track will develop so much. It may end up a dry line may end up forming in that period of, let's say, 8 minutes you're in the pits. You'll then go back out and you'll be like, wow, this track is totally different as the times that keep tumbling on the board. And the sound that you can hear is Alex Albon, who's going to do the traditional, just snatching the inside tyre as he skates through the gravel, just about makes it out the other side. And we're going to see someone probably lock up going into turn 1. Looks like one of the Hasses deciding to maybe a little bit too late to take the escape road and across the gravel. So you need to be aware that the track will develop and make sure that you need to be prepared to adapt as well.
And that's the sound of Max Verstappen in the Red Bull going through the gravel into turn 1 as well. Couldn't get it turned in or stopped in time. Bounces along the gravel, but rejoins. The times are tumbling quite dramatically. Fastest at the moment, Oscar Piastri at 1:25.4. Rosanna Tennant in the pit lane. What have you got?
Well, as Max Verstappen has a little skirmish off track when he left the pits, I tell you what, you know it's him leaving because the crowds go wild, Harry. They are on their feet, they are screaming. We often get that, don't we, at other tracks around the world because the wonderful Dutch army, as we hear his radio.
Wait, what the is going on with the car? No grip. It's spinning everything, everywhere.
That's normally what we hear during a practice session, not during quali.
Yeah, it certainly is.
Well, Max Verstappen getting the crowd going this afternoon. They are cheering him on, but now he doesn't seem so happy with the car underneath him, which is not a good sign for the two-time world champion, obviously now chasing down his third championship. And just a word on Williams, actually. As I was walking around after lunch, I saw the new team principal of Williams, James Vowles, as Logan Sargent is at the top of the timesheets at the moment. And I said, look, is this real? Is this pace that we've seen over the last couple of days real? And he said, yeah, it is. So watch out. Maybe Williams are going to trouble the top 10, at least, in this qualifying session.
You know what? They have both been looking fairly on it so far, although we never quite know with Williams, especially in practice, what the fuel loads are either. But as Rosanna says, Sargent has just popped up now fourth as the two McLarens are now 1 and 2. Norris had a Piastri on a 1:23.2, just over 4.5 tenths clear of Piastri. Perez, then Sargent. Albon is on a lap at the moment, looking very faster than anybody in the first sector. Comes across the line and goes third fastest for the tie driver, just in front of Ocon. So Williams here coming alive in these conditions.
And usually that's going to continue. We're going to see these times tumble. So Norris top of the times, 1:23.26, and earlier on Max Verstappen in free practice 3 a 1:21.6. So I expect them to be doing these times that we've seen from free practice 3 in the 1:21s, and maybe even lower later on in this qualifying 1 session, as at the moment just purples and green sector times flowing everywhere on the timing screen.
Yeah, Leclerc fastest of anybody at the moment in the first sector. Verstappen has just started a lap. He was on a fast lap and I think he bailed out of it, so now he's going again. He's currently plumb last at the moment with only Lewis Hamilton in front of him. Norris fastest. Perez comes across the line to go second fastest, 3/10 from. A reminder, this is Q1 and we are eliminating everybody down from 60th to 20th, and that is where they will start Sunday's Grand Prix. At the moment, in danger, Kevin Magnussen in the Haas, Alfa Romeo's Zhou Guanyu and Valtteri Bottas, Lewis Hamilton's Mercedes, and Max Verstappen in that Red Bull, who is now on a better lap along with Hamilton, both setting the sector times alight, as it's now the two Ferraris that take over the top of the timing board, as one of them, Charles Leclerc, once again finds issues coming into turn 1 and has to bail out of it and take to the escape roads.
Well, he'd just gone fastest at that point, Harry, and he went off on as he was starting his recharge lap, which is slightly unusual. But anyway, there we are. Another example of how tricky things are. And Lance Stroll goes up to 4th in the Aston Martin now.
Lewis Hamilton is about to come across the line as well, and he has had a great middle sector as Fernando Alonso goes fastest by over 1/10 and a half of George Russell. This is the sound of Lewis Hamilton, who can't quite find enough time to beat his teammate Russell, but it's enough for 4th as Verstappen lays down his marker of a 1:22.786, 7 thousandths of a second clear of Fernando Alonso. But the two McLarens haven't given up yet. They are showing mighty pace as Norris now once again regains the top spot in this Q1 session. But as you alluded to, as Piastri finds the grass and almost careers into the wall, keeps it planted, brakes for the chicane, the right-hander of 11, the gravel to your left of 12, applies the throttle, lives to fight another day, and found a huge chunk of time in that middle sector. We'll see what he's made of in these last couple of corners, but time's tumbling all the time as the conditions change all the time.
Yeah, Alex Albon has gone purple in the first sector, but a little bit off from, I think it's Max Verstappen. No, it's now Piastri actually in that middle sector, sorry. So Albon comes across the line to go up to 3rd, but Piastri goes up to top of the timesheets. We're just not going to be able to keep up with all these times keep tumbling and changing, Harry.
And as we look out the commentary box window, there's some blue sky peeking through, but there's a lot of ominous grey cloud as well. So I think the threat of weather is still very much on the radar with 8.5 minutes left of Q1. This is the sound of Max Verstappen as he comes across the line. He does improve his time, but it's only enough for 4th fastest. Liam Lawson in the AlphaTauri in his qualifying debut, replacing the injured Daniel Ricciardo, currently down in 20th and last, but is on for a personal best as it currently stands.
Yeah, and that makes it even more important. If that rain that we can see out of our commentary box window happens to approach before the end of the session and the heavens do open, no one will necessarily improve at all. So that's why we're seeing everybody out. No one really coming in or looking to box at the moment. Maybe some might peel in for a fresh set of intermediate tyres, but they're all staying out there at the moment because they must know that the rain is coming and it's crucial to get a lap time in now.
The sound of Carlos Sainz coming across the line just sets the 7th fastest time. It's Piastri currently 2.5 tenths clear of Perez, then Norris, Albon, Verstappen, the top 5. In the elimination zone now, Lawson did a lap good enough for 16th, ahead of Bottas, Magnussen, Sargent and Gasly. Gasly plumb last is 4 tenths off of his teammate Esteban Ocon to get through at the moment into Q2. So we're talking about 5 margins here as George Russell comes screaming through the last 2 corners with a little bit of a twitch to the rear, will come across the line, and he's currently 9th. What is that? It's fastest by 7,000ths of a second as Alpine tell Pierre Gasly on the radio, more rain expected in 5 minutes.
Yeah, that's before the end of the session, so we're seeing a few people pop into the pits now to maybe get a new set of intermediate tyres as Norris is going to cross the line, and he's gone purple, purple, purple. That's 3 purples, and that jumps him up to the top of the times by 6 tenths of a second on George Russell, and we're seeing less and less spray out of the commentary box window now and down the straight, so we can almost might even see not a dry line, but we're seeing the tracks of where majority of the drivers are going. So we're seeing the common line here.
Max Verstappen's on for a pretty mighty lap at the moment, currently down in 7th. Leclerc going strong in the first sector, losing a little bit of time towards the end of the middle sector. Ocon finding some time as well. Piastri's going again too, but personal bests at the moment. Sergio Perez is down in 4th, about 8.5 tenths off of Norris currently, and in the elimination zone it is still Ocon now, Lawson, Bottas, Magnussen and Sargent. Magnussen and Sargent both on outlaps as Leclerc comes across the line to go 4th fastest.
And what's interesting about that, Harry, is Oscar Piastri now takes the lead from Lando Norris's teammate by 0.18 of a second, is that Leclerc was looking for the wet part of the track on the inside of the straight there as he finished that lap, so there's obviously the track's beginning to dry and the intermediate tyres are starting to overheat.
Max Verstappen comes round the final corner, foot to the floor and crosses the line and goes fastest by 0.24 of a second. Verstappen ahead of Piastri, Norris, Russell, Alonso the top 5, Leclerc, Perez, Albon, Gasly, Stroll the top 10, Sainz, Ocon, Hamilton, Tsunoda and Zhou the top 15, and currently at risk of elimination by 1,000th of a second as it currently stands. Hülkenberg in the Haas, Lawson in the AlphaTauri, Bottas in the Alfa Romeo, Magnussen in the Haas and Sargent in the Williams. Now, I was looking at Lewis Hamilton and thinking he was struggling a little bit towards the bottom end of the timing screens, and this is the sound as we ride on board with Hamilton, and traffic management is an issue.
Okay, copy.
And he was getting blocked behind an Aston Martin as they were gearing up around the final corner, Alice.
Yeah, he did. He had to have a little bit of a lift on the final corner there as it got very close there.
That would have been a crash if I didn't avoid him then.
I tell you what, that's Sainz and Piastri yet again coming quite close into turn 1. And it's the Ferrari of Sainz peeling out of the pit lane as Piastri gets up to speed on the racing line, and Sainz just comes across.
I couldn't see a thing on the pit.
Couldn't see a thing, Carlos, but you know to really go slow if you're going to move on to the racing line.
Also, the team should surely know Piastri on exit.
The team should have told him as well. They get GPS, so they should have been aware and told him as well.
Not the first time Ferrari should have told a driver. Leclerc got a penalty a couple of races ago for that.
Yeah, absolutely. And that incident, well, not that incident actually, the one with Hamilton complaining about being impeded by Lance Stroll has been noted by race control, so we'll see if anything comes of that. Alex Albon has snuck up to the top of the timing screens with a 120.9, nearly just under 3 tenths clear from Verstappen. Sargent follows through on some improved pace we're seeing from the American rookie, up in 6th at the moment, just a second off though his teammate. Zhou Guanyu and Alfa Romeo's Valtteri Bottas both need to put in some better lap times, which they are on course to do at the moment, both currently at risk of being eliminated as George Russell is on the overall best at the moment in Sector 1.
He is indeed. 600s up on Albon. So he'll be looking to have a clean end to his lap to jump up to the top as Zhou Guanyu goes into the top 10, popping in a time good enough for 8th place. So this is where we're seeing more drivers now coming out of the pits and maybe changing to a fresh set of intermediate tyres. And this is where we're going to see the times really start to, and it's crunch time now. You know there's 2 minutes, just over 2 minutes remaining in this session. You've got to nail every single braking zone, every application to throttle to make sure you get that lap in.
And Alice, just as they need to do that, the coats are going on in the grandstand opposite us, the hoods are going up, it looks like it might have started raining again.
So Alpine's weather radar was pretty much on point there for the rain, and Ocon is an Alpine driver at risk, sitting down in 17th place, where Gasly is up in 6th, so Ocon really needs to try and find some pace.
I'm hearing Rosanna is confirming that the rain is also coming down in the pit lane as well, so well spotted, Andrew. But 2 minutes left then. Who is at risk? This is Q1, where we eliminate the bottom 5 drivers, everybody from 16th place down, and at the moment, Sainz, Ocon, Hamilton, Hülkenberg and Liam Lawson, with Valtteri Bottas right on the edge, as Max Verstappen is also told there is light rain in the pit lane. Nico Hülkenberg comes across the line. He's got a habit of putting that Haas car up into Q3 this year, and at the moment looks set to carry on. That goes 7th fastest. The 2 Ferraris are in trouble at the moment, but Sainz comes across the line, goes into the top 5. He is that investigation, or the incident between Sainz and Piastri has been noted by race control, not necessarily under investigation. Tsunoda up into 8th at the moment. Leclerc still down in 16th and not having a good lap. He'll need to go again.
He's vulnerable. He's on a warm-up lap, cool-down lap, recharge lap, whatever you want to call it. He's in the 2nd sector at the moment. He's got time for one more timed lap, Charles Leclerc. Potentially 2 if he gets across the line, as long as he can do 2 consecutive ones. But yeah, he's really up against it. And Fernando Alonso down in 15th as well, very vulnerable.
Problem with those who've left it right to the end is that you can so easily get blocked in these final couple of corners, as everybody else is either finishing off a lap or trying to get one more in. Alonso 15th, Zhou 16th, Magnussen 17th, Leclerc 18th, Bottas 19th and Lawson currently in 20th, as Alonso comes across the line and gets himself up into the top 10. Zhou Guanyu and Valtteri Bottas on for personal best at the moment. Zhou Guanyu in the Alfa Romeo has lost a bit of time though in the middle sector, but up on Ocon, who he needs to beat to get out of the elimination zone. Logan Sargent should probably also think about trying to get a better lap time in as well. He's the next one at risk after Ocon in 14th, as Zhou Guanyu gets a huge slide coming through the penultimate corner. The right-hander, the double-banked right-hander, as he carefully controls that Alfa Romeo. Zhou Guanyu comes across the line, and it's not enough. It's 15th. Bottas then comes across the line, and it's not enough for the Finn either. He takes the checkered flag, does the Finnish driver, in 18th spot.
And there's a lot more spray, Harry, already in the air. You can see that, and Charles Leclerc is fighting for his life here in 19th place in the middle sector.
Is Leclerc looking at a Q1 elimination here? He's 4 thousandths of a second up as he comes into the chicane. I thought he almost ran a little bit deep there, but he kept it tight, makes his way through. Just 2 more corners to go. The double-banked right-hander, Leclerc, currently down in 19th spot as it stands. He comes round the final corner. His teammate Carlos Sainz is safe and through, up in 5th. What can the Monegasque racer do as he comes across the line and by a whisker makes it through, but it's only 14th as he takes the checkered flag at the end of that Q1 session.
They'll be breathing a sigh of relief for sure there.
That is less than 500ths of a second Charles Leclerc has got through into Q2 by there.
I think
in fact, it's less than that. It's less than 200ths of a second, sorry.
A deep breath, and only Perez is in front of him, and Hamilton are only a few tenths up the road. So they have also struggled in these conditions as the rain has started to intensify in those last couple of minutes. Eliminated, I should say, then in Q1 is Zhou Guanyu in the Alfa Romeo, Esteban Ocon in the Alpine, Kevin Magnussen in the Haas, Valtteri Bottas in the Alfa Romeo, and Liam Lawson in his first Grand Prix for AlphaTauri will start 20th and last.
Yeah, disappointing for those that are out at the moment. Liam Lawson, I mean, he's had so little experience of an F1 weekend, so I expected him really to be out in this first qualifying session, but it's just so the times are just so close. Looking at the timing screen, Perez, for example.
Come on. Now, let's be on it. Traffic. The traffic is the most important. Time warm-up, everything. This is important. This is the only priority we have. Let's focus on that and everything will be fine. Otherwise, we are going to be out in Q2. We are lucky already to be in.
So that's
Copy, understood.
So that's Charles Leclerc really reading the riot act to Ferrari, and that's really interesting because in the past 2 or 3 years he's been quite a passive position on the radio. He tends to do what Ferrari are told. This year you can sense that he's taking on more of a leadership role within that team. I'm pretty sure he's going to sign a new contract before too long. They certainly want him to. He certainly wants to stay. You can read all about that in an interview with him on the BBC Sport website next week, by the way. Here's Bottas' radio.
Don't know what happened there.
He's confused about why he's out, but he's saying, look guys, this is not good enough, and he's quite right. Ferrari, for so many years, too many years now, race operation wise they've been poor, and he's trying to get hold of the team by the scruff of the neck and say, come on, we can do better than this.
An unhappy Leclerc then for sure. He does skate through into Q2 and the top 14 covered by just over a second. It is tight in Formula One, and he did go very, very deep into that chicane, did Charles Leclerc, on that last flying lap.
I tell you what, Alice, Charles Leclerc is famous for being brilliant in qualifying over one lap. I wonder, that lap to get through with the track conditions worsening, the rain coming down heavier, I wonder if that's one of his best laps, you know?
I would say so, because you know he's under pressure, and we're seeing a replay of him getting ever so sideways on the exit of the team. And you're under pressure, and you know this is not where you should be starting. They're a good pace, really, you could say, in free practice.
Alonso going away. I get massive impeding everywhere, mate.
And I have to admit there, Hamilton is right. He had quite a few people impeding him there. But back to Charles Leclerc. How long can he put up with this from Ferrari? Because it almost seems to be that the drivers are like coaching those on the pit wall of how to do their jobs. And we've already seen pop up on our screens as well that Piastri and Sainz, that incident of they've put down as forcing another driver off the track by Sainz. Could that be a penalty coming his way? So again, that's just Ferrari not letting the drivers know, and it's hard, especially when everyone's going flat out in this session and desperate to try and get the lap. You need that information. Okay, you need to be keeping an eye on in your mirrors as well, but you need that information coming to, especially on a track like this where, you know, it's quite easy to make a mistake, especially in these tricky conditions.
Right, well, a little bit of a pause then while we get ready for Q2. So let's head down to Rosanna Tennant in the pits.
Thank you, Harry. Yes, the rain is still falling. It's very light rain, but it is persistent. And what we've seen over the last few hours is that it lasts for about 5 or 10 minutes and then moves on. There's quite a strong breeze here by the coast. Just a word on a couple of the drivers. The Williams drivers bookending those that got through, with Alex Albon at the top and Logan Sargent just making it through, backing up what their team principal James Vowles told me on the way to the pit lane earlier on, saying that the pace they were showing in practice was real. And then a word on Esteban Ocon. A really difficult day for him today. He was P16 in the final practice session and now P17 come qualifying. And yet yesterday he said the car was feeling good. It seems the conditions just really not suiting him or the Alpine car today.
No, well, Gasly was able to put that Alpine up in the in 8th spot at the end of Q1. So clearly there's a difference of opinion going down at Alpine between their two drivers. But Ocon, I mean, the last couple of qualifyings for him, 13th, 12th, 14th.
Is there more rain coming? There is a cell passing to the south, which is quite heavy. Just depends how much of that affects the track.
I think that's a fairly accurate description.
It's basically, I don't know. I think that's what I would get from that. I have no idea.
That was Max Verstappen being given a bit of a generic weather report from his engineer Giampiero Lambiasi, but they're all raring and ready to go because I think they want to get out before there is any chance of any more rain coming down. So cars already queuing up in the pit lane ready for this next session, Q2. 15 minutes to get yourself up into the top 10 shootout. So come the end of the next 15, we will be losing 11th, 12th, 13th, 14th and 15th on this grid, and that's what we'll be setting. So it's all about getting yourself into the top 10 as the green light comes on at the end of the pit lane, and Logan Sargent is straight out in the Williams, followed by a roar from the grandstands as Max Verstappen heads out quite slowly, actually, finding himself a little bit of gap to Sargent in front, because there are quite a few investigations going on for those that have been involved in impeding issues, traffic management. Such an issue in that final sector, but I suppose, Alex, that should theoretically become easier the further we go into qualifying.
Yeah, you expect them to have less cars on track, of course, but I can guarantee we probably still will see some impeding during this session as Max Verstappen heads now through turn 4, 5 and 6, and actually there is a dry line just about starting to appear there on the track. The sun's starting to come out of our commentary box window. The hoods of these ponchos are being removed, umbrellas are being placed down. But is the rain coming? Even Max Verstappen's engineer has no idea either, not trusting their weather radars. So I might think that we may see, if we do have no more rain, someone might brave it, maybe George Russell. You know he likes to brave jumping on 6, maybe towards the end of this session possibly, but definitely at the start of Q3.
Well, intermediate tyres are the choice, even with a dry line beginning to appear at certain parts of this circuit. Circuit Zandvoort, 4.25 kilometres, 2.6 miles, 14 turns, 4 to the left and 10 to the right, with some hugely banked corners as well, as Verstappen begins his first flyer.
And just a bit of news, there are some incidents being investigated after the session, as you say, Harry, particularly the one between Piastri and Sainz and Hamilton and Stroll, but the one between Hamilton and Alonso has been reviewed, no further investigation.
Thank you very much, Andrew Benson. Agree with that, Alice?
I mean, if Hamilton was on a flying lap, then Alonso did get in his way, but maybe Hamilton wasn't on a flying lap, but have to see the replay again. But the sound you can hear is Max Verstappen, who's just gone purple in the first sector. He's entered now into sector 2, coming into turn 8, just being careful over the bump, then swinging into turn 9, where you just have to be patient with the throttle, as Max Verstappen has done, bleeding it into the corner, and he heads out now down to turn 11 and 12. And we've seen a few drivers, haven't we, Harry, that have locked up and gone over the gravel. He clips the inside curve, which sends him left into turn 12. Packed grandstand there, gets it a little bit sideways as his car scrabbles for traction, and now into turn 13, where Charles Leclerc got all sideways on his way to heading into Q2 as Max brings it across the line. He's purple so far in the first 2 sectors, and he jumps to the top of the times of 1:21.9.
Yeah, 1.2 seconds clear of Logan Sargent, the only other driver to set a time at the moment, but they're all coming thick and fast. They are all out there. Perez can only manage 3rd, so Sargent and Russell now slips up into 2nd, splits the 2 Red Bulls as it currently stands. I have a suspicion, though, that Perez is quite a way off, so I have a feeling he bailed out of that lap a little bit of a way round. He'll need to go again, and certainly we'll see what Perez can do. Hamilton and Sainz coming behind them. Albon, though, very fast, top to Q1. Let's see what he has got coming through the final corner on his opening gambit. It's a 1:22.6 for 3rd for Alex Albon. It's so confusing trying to read these weather conditions, because we're seeing lovely blue sky and the sun creeping out. It starts to get a little bit hotter as well, but then you look a little bit further into the distance and this cell of rain that Red Bull are seeing is absolutely there, and it is getting closer.
It is getting closer, which is why we're seeing people not usually just they usually come in, they do a couple of they do a couple of laps, then they'll box and they'll hang on for a little bit, but they're trying to get their laps in now, just in case this rain does creep up on them. The sun is beaming out on the main straight, but as you said, Harry, other angles we're seeing, the clouds are hanging around as Max Verstappen into the 120s now, as the track is just getting quicker and quicker with all cars on circuit.
Just seeing a few replays here as well. The Alpine, the sole remaining Alpine of Pierre Gasly, running very wide through the left-hander of turn 3, Hugenholtz. So wide that he tries to rejoin the track and collects the grass and the mud and bounces along the red and white rumble strip that runs on the outside of the circuit, that does rejoin Gasly. Currently not with a competitive lap time on the board yet. I imagine that was a bit of an error from the Frenchman, and will have to go again. But it's Verstappen, Sargent, Leclerc, Stroll, Russell, the top 5, Hülkenberg, Alonso, Hamilton, Albon, Piastri, the top 10, Tsunoda, Norris, Perez, Sainz and Gasly, the 15 drivers that are in this Q2 session. And a reminder, we are knocking everybody out from 11th down to 15th as we set the grid for Sunday's Dutch Grand Prix, as McLaren's Oscar Piastri continue to showcase their pace. Fastest over anybody in the middle sector, but he's still overall 7/10 off Max Verstappen's fastest time.
Yeah, Max had the legs really on him in that first sector, so a little bit of work for him to do. First sector is turn 1, 2, 3, and then the flat out section of 4, 5 and 6. So not too many corners, too many braking zones for him to deal with, but clearly the Red Bull working a little bit better in that sector.
Certainly is. Perez comes across the line now and goes 5th fastest. Still a second off his teammate though, so Perez hasn't really shown too much so far this weekend. He'll be pleased not to have been knocked out in Q1, but the final runs in this Q2 session can be incredibly critical, but of course it all hinges on what the weather does as well. Sainz crosses the line and it's only enough for 12th fastest for the Spaniard.
Perez, he was struggling, wasn't he, in free practice? He was about a second off Verstappen then, so he's not really comfortable in these conditions. He wasn't too bad compared to Max, if I remember rightly, in the dry conditions, but clearly not having the confidence in these conditions as Albon sets purple final sector and had done a decent time at 120.9, 3.5 tenths off of Norris now, who's at the top of the times.
Lewis Hamilton, though, has found some speed in the first sector, fastest of anybody as he now comes in to the middle sector, halfway through the middle sector. This is the sound as we ride on board with his teammate George Russell coming to the approach of the braking zone for the chicane. He's about just under 2.5 tenths down on Lando Norris's time in the middle sector. Russell currently in 11th, looking to get up into that top 10 as Verstappen once again takes to the top spot. At risk, currently, it's Russell, Hülkenberg, Gasly, Hamilton and Sainz. And this is the sound of Russell, who we ride on board with to the line. What can the Briton do? It's 4th fastest for George Russell.
Yeah, it is. So we're seeing more and more of the dry line just starting to appear. The main straight's still a little bit damp, so maybe people might opt not to decide to jump onto those slick tyres just yet. As Charles Leclerc comes across the line, pops up into P6. He is safe for now, and I say for now because that Ferrari doesn't seem to be working very well, and times are still tumbling.
They certainly are. We mentioned Lewis Hamilton earlier, was setting the timing screen alight in that first sector. He's now finished his lap and gone 3rd fastest, 4.5 tenths off Verstappen.
Track is drying super quickly. We need the new inter right at the last lap.
That's Carlos Sainz saying we need a new intermediate tyre right at the very end then. So it could be a last lap dash. Last one across the line. Seen that before, plenty of time.
Exactly, and this is where the teams, it's not up to the drivers now. They can only give the feedback like Sainz has done there to his Ferrari team. But then it's up to the team to make sure that they put you out in a good position. They make the choice with the tyre and they get everything out right. So the engineers will be diving into their spreadsheets now, doing all the calculations to make sure that it's inch perfect for the drivers, so they are on the right tyre, on the track at the best time.
Carlos Sainz is currently coming through the chicane, personal best sector 1 and 2. in the first and middle sectors. Nico Hulkenberg also trying to put his Haas into Q3 for another time around. Last time he did that in Hungary a couple of races ago. In fact, he was only about half a second off of pole position when he qualified 10th in Hungary in that Haas, as Carlos Sainz does now come across the line. But for Sainz, it's still 15th. Meanwhile, Nico Hulkenberg still 13th. So at risk, Sergio Perez in 11th in the other Red Bull. Yuki Tsunoda in the AlphaTauri, who's on an outlap at the moment. Nico Hulkenberg in the Haas. Pierre Gasly in the Alpine, who is also on an outlap. And Carlos Sainz, who we've just been hearing over the radio, wants a new set of inters for one final lap to go, as the track now continues to dry up. That dry line certainly coming to the fore a lot more, as we're in the Dutch dunes just north of the North Sea, or the coastline here. It's just over the hills, through the dunes. So lovely picturesque seaside views. Sunshine and blue skies to one side, ominous grey clouds to another, as Sergio Perez darts through turn 9. Then the left-hander of 10. No DRS at the moment due to the track being declared wet and running wet intermediate tyres, so the rear wing flap will not be allowed to open to enforce the drag reduction system. Perez is struggling here because he's finding personal best to try and scoot through into the top 10, as Verstappen finds yet more time to cement nearly a second clear of Norris at the top with 4 minutes remaining of Q2.
Yeah, we can still see even more of a dry line, especially round 7, 8 and 9, but not quite a dry line round in 10, as 9 tenths. So Perez has jumped into second place,
which is great on the face of it, and then you look at the number.
9 tenths off of his teammate, so he really is struggling. And we're in the 119s now. Well, say we are. Max Verstappen is the only one that's in the 119s, but Alex Albon, purple in the first sector, 3 tenths quicker than the first sector that Max Verstappen achieved a lap ago.
And this is just Q2. We're not even fighting for pole position just yet. That's still to come. But we've got 3 minutes left of Q2. And it's a fight to get into the top 10 for that top 10 shootout. Sargent, Tsunoda, Hulkenberg, Gasly, Sainz all need to go again if they want a chance at making their way into the top 10. Alonso and Stroll, the two Aston Martins, which I think have had a fairly low-profile weekend so far in the grand scheme of things. Currently 9th and 10th, but Alonso at risk. Alonso is currently out there at the moment, but it's Albon who's finding the time as the rear of that Williams just starts to slide a little bit as he comes through turn 13, then into 14 straight away. Alex Albon, the London-born tie, goes to the top of the timing screens. 2.5 tenths clear in his Williams, ahead of the Red Bull of Max Verstappen, as Yuki Tsunoda finds some time as well, but he's 1.1 seconds adrift. Tsunoda goes up into third.
Yeah, no mistakes needed now from any driver on track. You may think you're safe as Gasly pops up into 8th place, but that's not safe. He's 3.5 tenths clear of 11th place, but I would say that is not safe. So he has to continue to push and make sure that he has no mistakes, because we are seeing such track evolution at the moment, as just greens and purples flying everywhere on the timing screen. So 2 minutes to go now, and this is crunch time now.
So I'm pretty sure Albon stuck some fresh inters to do that lap time on. Verstappen also, I think, has now just come out on an outlap and probably stuck a new pair of intermediate tyres on for some fresh rubber. So Lord knows what we're going to see from Max Verstappen in the next minute and a half. Carlos Sainz was talking a few moments ago about wanting to have some new, fresh intermediate rubber for his final run, which he is currently on now. And Ferrari have given him that new rubber, but it is not delivering him the time, Alice.
No, it's not. And I think that Sector 1 time now, and looking at the time screen, not many people are going green, and there is a real dry line. And the problem is, if you're on a wet tyre on a dry track, it just bubbles the surface of the tyre and you will have no grip. Saying that, Charles Leclerc has just popped in a purple sector in Sector 1, but Carlos Sainz is really... he didn't even do a personal best in Sector 1.
Leclerc, meanwhile, is on a overall best in Sector 1. Okay, so time's tumbling all the time. Piastri now is fastest, 7,000th clear of Albon. Russell, Verstappen, Alonso, the top 5, but we are looking at 11th downwards to who will be eliminated. Hamilton gets up into 8th place, just in front of Sargent. Feels a bit borderline to me about safety there for Hamilton. Sargent has also been looking fast. He might just get around for one more lap time, but as Leclerc tries to weave his way through the traffic coming through the final sector, he's got himself a little bit of a clear line, might even be able to get a bit of a toe off the car in front. Comes across the line for Leclerc. It's a 1:19.6. It's good enough for 3rd place. Hulkenberg starts a lap. He's currently on for a personal best. Hamilton's going again, but losing time as well in the first sector. Tsunoda, Norris, Gasly, Hulkenberg and Sainz all at risk of elimination as it currently stands, as the clock has now counted down to 0. Piastri is the first to take the checkered flag as the fastest driver.
He is on track as Hulkenberg comes now into turn 11, and he just runs a little bit wide at 12. How's that going to cost him some time? Because he really is, well, he's in the danger zone at the moment, so that's not going to help his lap whatsoever, as it is just a sole dry line now round turn 14. He crosses the line. Is it going to be enough to pop him? It is at the moment, but I would still say he's at huge risk.
Logan Sargent is in 11th. That Williams clearly has pace in it. Alex Albon manages to take the checkered flag in 2nd. Tsunoda pops up into 10th. Can he hold on to it? Hulkenberg drops down to 12th. Tsunoda can't hold on to it as Gasly comes through to take the line into 9th. Lewis Hamilton is at risk here of elimination. Carlos Sainz is as well, but he goes from 15th up into 9th spot. Hamilton then now dropped down into 12th as Stroll is the next driver in danger of being eliminated. Can Logan Sargent try and find something here? Logan Sargent can find something here. The American gets himself into Q3 for the first time in his Formula One career, which means we have lost Lance Stroll in the Aston Martin, Pierre Gasly in the Alpine, Lewis Hamilton in the Mercedes will start the Grand Prix tomorrow from 13th on the grid in front of Yuki Tsunoda and Nico Hulkenberg in the Haas.
That is, but I mean, Hamilton was struggling with traffic before, wasn't he? But I'm not sure if it's traffic now. He usually thrives in these conditions, doesn't he, Lewis Hamilton? He loves these type of conditions where the track is really changing, and Russell's not done. He's not struggling. He's sitting there pretty in 6th place, albeit 7/10 off the pace. But that is just that's going to be hard for Lewis Hamilton, especially when you know that the pace is roughly there in the car, as his teammate has demonstrated. And it's a circuit he loves and was dicing at the front of the field last year. So that's a tough one to take for Lewis Hamilton.
Second Q2 elimination of the season for Lewis Hamilton. Impressive, I think, in the grand scheme of things for Logan Sargent, who just about nicked through into the top 10, but that was impressive. Alex Albon continues to go above and beyond. He finished just half a second shy of Max Verstappen come the end of that in 3rd. Piastri splits them again, the gap half a tenth or so, but Verstappen was the fastest driver come the end of Q2 as they all peel back into the pit lane. So a reminder then, we have lost in 11th place Stroll, 12th Gasly, 13th Hamilton, Tsunoda 14th and Hulkenberg in 15th, and that is where, barring any post-race investigations or penalties, they will start Sunday's Dutch Grand Prix from, and it is a track where overtaking is difficult, as we see Logan Sargent getting wheeled back into his Williams garage, the first American to qualify in the top 10 since Michael Andretti at the 1993 Italian Grand Prix. Hasn't yet out-qualified a teammate compared to the rest of the grid. He has not out-qualified Alex Albon so far this season. And at the moment, the gap does appear to be a little bit large between Albon and Sargent, but we'll see what Sargent can do in this final part of qualifying, where we battle it out for pole position. We're just seeing a replay then here on board with Lewis Hamilton as he gets held up by a couple of cars. He just about dodges the AlphaTauri in front of him as he comes round the final corner. So traffic, as we knew in that final sector, was always going to be an issue.
Hamilton traffic, man. Hamilton didn't remove.
Okay, P14.
I would say that was probably safe for Lewis Hamilton, moved out the way. Yuki, I think there was enough room there, and we're sounding here as Charles Leclerc going off again. He loves going off at turn 1, isn't he? He's struggling there to get the car stopped. It is pretty bumpy down there into turn 1 as Lewis Hamilton watches on. Now, mandatory for all drivers, doesn't matter where you happen to qualify. In qualifying, you have to visit the FIA weighbridge and get your weight taken. And then he makes his way out the back of the FIA garage and heads back to his motorhome, keeping his helmet on and not looking particularly happy.
No, but I'll tell you what, who is looking happy? The grandstands, the Max fans, all in orange, dancing away to the dance music that is blaring from the grandstands. Very happy to see their man at the top, as we've all become accustomed to this season. Right then, we're gearing up for Q3 and the battle for pole position. So before we do that, we can head down to Jenny Gow.
Yes, and I'm just looking out at the grandstand as we speak. The flags are fluttering, they're yellow, and they're almost at a vertical angle to the flagpoles, so it's really blowy out there. That's blown the dark clouds away, and now it looks like a pretty sunny day. I wouldn't mind getting my beach towel and going down to the beach, but Rosanna and I have other things to do. But yeah, it's turned quite pleasant. I don't think there's going to be any more rain imminently.
Oh, famous last words, Jenny. Although I do kind of agree with you as we now start to get some lovely shots of the coastline. White puffy clouds are starting to come towards us. The blue sky is becoming more prevalent as the sun beams down on this Zandvoort circuit, Andrew Benson.
Look, picture perfect that shot, didn't it, from the helicopter, Harry? I've just got some information back from Mercedes about Lewis Hamilton. It was all about traffic and not getting a clean lap, it turns out. So he will not be happy about that, and I think we saw the evidence of that with him keeping his helmet on as he left the weighbridge there.
I think there'll be a few jaunts to race control by some team members to try and battle with anything they can to speak about impeding. We are, though, getting ready for the top 10 as it stands. So through to that top 10 shootout in Q3, the 12-minute session. Verstappen, Piastri, Albon, Alonso, Leclerc, Russell.
And we are safely through. Oh, thank God. Yes. That was my bad. If you wanted to take a big risk, I reckon you could try a slick, to be honest with you.
That was Norris, who will also be there along with Perez, Sainz and Sargent. Norris likes a risk in these kind of conditions.
Well, I bet the pit wall at McLaren were looking at those dying seconds thinking, Lando, you need to get a move on. And he did. He admitted there, yeah, my bad. I just took it a bit too steady. But I agree with him. I think it slicks. We see a solid dry line now coming out of the final sector. It seems pretty dry now going through parts of Sector 1 and especially into Sector 2 as well.
Message from race control. Shock, another impeding notice going up between Hamilton and Tsunoda this time around. So that has been noted. So we'll see if anything comes from that. The grandstands are absolutely packed. It's fantastic to see so many smiles on the fans' faces here. And we say it a lot. It really is a sea of orange because that is literally the only colour you can buy from the merchandise stalls approaching the circuit here.
So it's interesting that Tsunoda was complaining about Hamilton blocking him because actually it was Tsunoda who blocked Hamilton at turn 13 on his quickest lap that Hamilton is complaining about most at Mercedes.
I think we're going to be seeing a fair bit of that after this qualifying session then, which has technically begun. We are now into our 12-minute session and the green light is on, and it's George Russell who is not waiting about. He's first out with Oscar Piastri for company as well. So Alice, I want to say who's your pick for pole, but we all know the answer. But could we see an upset maybe? Could a McLaren spear something? Could an Alex Albon suddenly find something?
I would say we could see an upset.
Go on then.
I'm just going to put it out there because if you do go on the slick tyre, and as great as Max Verstappen is, and every single driver that's obviously racing out here and that have got through into Q3, there is just one line. And if you do happen to put an inch of that slick tyre onto a wet part of the track, as some drivers have already opted to go out on the slick tyre. And guess what? George Russell is the first one of those to go out. We've got Albon, Russell, Sainz and Sargent who have gone out on the slick tyre, which I think is definitely the right choice. But there's one line, Harry, and if you go straight slightly off that line, it's going to be slippery. You're going to have no grip. A slick tyre does not work on a wet track. And then off you go into either the tyre barriers or the gravel. And I'm surprised, actually, Max Verstappen's gone out on intermediate tyres.
Yeah, Verstappen, Piastri, Leclerc, Perez all heading out on the intermediate tyre as well. But the dry line is absolutely there, but it can get quite tight, especially coming out through turns 4, 5 and 6, coming into the middle sector here, where there is really only one line. So one, as you say, Alice, wrong move, one slight tyre onto a bit of wet patch, and you are quickly off. But Oscar Piastri has done one outlap on those intermediates and very quickly decided to come straight back in to the McLaren pit box as they change his green intermediate tyres for a set of the red soft rubber. George Russell then currently making his way through that section, which does get quite tight and twisty as it starts to head downhill. And it's a good sector one time at the moment. We'll wait and see how it sits with the rest of the field as they start to come through. Albon should be making his way through soon.
We have them ready, right? Stand by.
Max, please focus on the job at hand.
Now, we have heard Max Verstappen and Jean-Pierre Lambiase getting quite edgy with each other before, a bit short, but that's all. Red Bull clearly state that as being, you know, they're all friendly, they're just able to speak like that. Is that GP just saying, look, you don't need to tell us to worry about the tyres, you just need to drive on the track, or what? How do you read that message?
I don't understand what Red Bull are doing. He's the only one on intermediate tyres, and the track is dry. Everyone else is now that went out of boxed for slick tyres, sorry. So obviously they just wanted to check something, maybe had a slight issue that we don't know about, and he needed to get that checked out. So that's why the team sort of said, you know, you need to just go out, Max, just stay calm, we know, but maybe we've got a bit of an issue that we need to check out first. So he's coming to the pits now, and he's on an outlap, and he's bolted on, I believe, a set of soft tyres.
Yeah, he has now, as we're seeing the first lap times come across then. Albon leads the way, a 1:15.7, a second clear of his teammate Sargent. Sainz, Russell, the top four. And we've had a huge incident for Logan Sargent, the American rookie, getting into Q3 for the first time this season, has showed the most amount of pace he's had all year. Still about a second, though, off his teammate, and that is a huge shunt. The front end from the car gone, the rear end off the car gone. He said he is okay, but that looks like he's come through the right-hander approaching Hugenholtz, turn 3, which is the left-hander banked. So he's come through the right-hander, and I wonder if he's dipped a tyre onto the wet patch.
Well, we will see the replay as he climbs out of the car, driver okay. I'm expecting to see the replay and see that he's probably clipped the curb going into turn 2 that's on the left-hand side, and then that's just sent him off. The curb will be a slightly raised curb. It's quite a high curb on the entry to turn 2. So if he just happens to have clipped that curb, that would still be wet because no one really uses it, that's probably sent him into the barrier, and it's really done a lot of damage. Both front corners and the rear right corner heavily damaged there, and actually he's hit the Tech Pro barrier so hard that it's launched one of the pieces of barrier up, and it's resting on top of the tyres there.
So just a bit of context, sorry, for Logan Sargent. We're going to get a replay here. Alice, take it over.
Yeah, he was up on that curve, wasn't he, as I thought, and he's turned in, and he has just become a passenger.
You okay? Are you okay?
Yeah, I'm okay. Sorry.
So for Logan Sargent, this is about the worst thing that could have happened. He, as you say, Harry, he's got into Q3 for the first time in his career, and his future at Williams is under scrutiny at the moment. And yesterday, James Vowles, the Williams team principal, was talking about what they needed to see from Logan Sargent. So on one level, he's done exactly what James asked him to do, which was to, as he put it, perform under pressure. On the other hand, he's done the opposite because he's performed under pressure and then he's gone and stacked it into the wall under pressure. Just to quote, this is quoting James Vowles here, there's elements where he keeps growing and finding performance and improvements and performance under pressure. That's what we're looking for. The rate of learning has to increase now. So on one hand, James Vowles will have been really pleased to see him get into Q3, although the car is obviously pretty competitive this weekend. Look where Alex Albon is, fastest again after he was at the end of Q2. Sargent was a second off his pace, and now he's crashed.
And that sums it up perfectly, Andrew, doesn't it? I'm actually, I'm gutted for Logan Sargent because this is the first time he's really, since probably Saudi Arabia qualifying, where he would have got into Q3, I think, then had he not dipped all four wheels across the line, which was the pit lane entry, which was agreed by race control beforehand with all the drivers that if you did that, your time would be deleted. And since then, he hasn't had the pace compared to Alex Albon. And coming into Q3, he was a second off Albon, and he had set one lap time in that session, and it was a second as well between Albon and Sargent. So there is clearly pace in that car, and Sargent just starts to push and push. He can see the light at the end of the tunnel almost, and then decides to hit to the wall. I tell you what, though, we have another rookie on the grid for the first time in his first race, gearing up. Liam Lawson speaking to Jenny Gow.
Yes, Liam, lovely to have you on the radio. I'm sorry about the circumstances that you ended up out in the first part of qualifying, but you're here. You've made it. This is kind of good and kind of bad, is it?
Yeah, it's obviously exciting to be driving. Just a very challenging day to jump straight into P3 and with these conditions as well. Yeah, it's pretty tricky. We definitely got a lot closer by the start of quali. I felt pretty good. First run we were actually somewhat competitive, but then obviously the second set it rained again and I didn't extract everything out of it, so yeah, it's been a challenging day.
I was going to say, you couldn't have asked for a more challenging debut in F1, but does that give you more ammunition for tomorrow? Does that give you more experience to actually go out there and see what you can do?
Potentially, but I think obviously looking at the forecast, it's probably going to be dry, and if it is dry, then I sort of got to learn on the go again. I haven't driven the dry tyre here, so or in this car at all. So yeah, it's going to be a challenging race for sure. But I'm excited to be racing. I think the target is just to have a clean race.
Loads of people will be cheering you on. Well done.
Thank you.
So that was Jenny having a chat with Liam Lawson. And if you weren't here for FP3 or just joining us now, that is the 21-year-old from New Zealand who has stepped in at the 11th hour for Daniel Ricciardo after his crash in FP2, where Ricciardo then sustained a bone broken in his hand. That's ruled him out for the rest of the weekend at the very least. So Lawson, the Red Bull reserve, has been substituted in, and he's raced in Formula 3, Formula 2, finishing third in 2022 and is currently racing in the Japanese Super Formula Championship with 3 wins and 3 podiums to his name so far. Also went up against Alex Albon in the DTM Championship, which is the German Touring Car Championship. He actually beat Alex Albon to second in that championship. So, I mean, Liam Lawson was always going to be up against it, wasn't he, Alice? And he does qualify 20th and last, about 1.2 seconds off of Valtteri Bottas in 19th. But could we expect much more from the New Zealander?
I mean, as Jenny touched on there, and even Liam did as well, it's a tough track to come to with such little experience in a car. He had experience here in Formula 2 last year. He ended up qualifying not too bad in 6th place, but it's tough, you know. He's missed out on the first 2 sessions. And we know at Red Bull there's a high expectation. Doesn't really seem to matter the circumstance, does it, at Red Bull? Okay, it's not Red Bull, it's AlphaTauri, but it's pretty much the second team, isn't it, effectively? And
he is a Red Bull contracted driver.
Exactly. He runs the colours racing in Super Formula in Japan. So it's difficult. And like he said, he's going to be out there learning tomorrow, and I think he just needs to try and make sure, and I know that he'll know this already, just try and keep the car in one piece. It'll be a tough ask on his body. it'll be the longest race he's ever done in a single-seater, that's for sure. So it's a tough track physically, on the body and mentally as well.
You know what would have been a really interesting scenario? The red flag is out, so the clock is stopped at 8 minutes 13. But if suddenly the rain came and it was a torrential downpour, Alex Albon and Logan Sargent lock out the front row, although Sargent might not be able to take the
Get
start.
out there and do your rain dance now, Harry.
We'll see. Wouldn't that be a story? Verstappen, well, he's registered as 7th, but no lap time on the board. Only 4 drivers have set a lap time before the red flag came out. Albon and Sargent, 1 and 2. Then Carlos Sainz, and then George Russell. Everybody else had to bail out of it at the end due to Sargent's big crash. And the car has now been craned away, but now the work is beginning on the barrier, which hopefully shouldn't take too long. We haven't had a message to say when the session would be restarted as of yet, but it's a real shame actually for Sargent, because he is pushing, but when he comes into that right-hander, the dry line does suddenly get a little bit more narrow before it then widens into the braking zone for the left 3 of Hugenholtz. So he's done exactly what we feared a driver might do, and he's dipped a dry tyre onto a wet patch, very similar to where Kevin Magnussen in the Haas went off in the dry race last year. He somehow managed to clap the barrier and carry on with his race. Logan Sargent not so lucky in this case, but the red flag doesn't deter the fans who continue to dance.
It just goes to show, doesn't it, the precision that's required of Formula 1 drivers, particularly in these conditions. I think people underestimate that. You know, they're trying to keep... That dry line is about as wide as a car, and he's on the limit. That's a tricky corner in the damp. You know, it's not easy flat by any stretch of the imagination, and you've got to position your car in exactly the right place, basically to the centimetre, Alex, isn't it? And because any bit of wet track that hits those slick tyres in that sort of situation with the car under load, you're going to lose it, and that's exactly what's happened to him.
No, 100%. You're definitely right there, and that is what he's done. He's clipped the curb, gone onto the curb, which you can use a little bit in the curb when it's bone dry, but certainly not in any wet condition, and like this, when they haven't been using that part of the circuit. So he has gone over.
Well, Nico Hülkenberg, speaking of the German driver in the Haas, managed to get through into Q2. Jenny's with him now.
I am. Nico, I love the blonde hair. I haven't seen this before, so that's a nice addition. But how are you feeling after that? It wasn't ideal, obviously.
Yeah, 15th is obviously not, a result you celebrate. But I feel we didn't leave much out there on the table. So it's just been a bit tricky for us so far this weekend. We didn't have enough pace, to really make an impact. And that continued to be the case in quali too. So, I think we just need to find more car pace to put ourselves in a better position.
Does that make you slightly more, I suppose, fearful of the next 10 races? You come back from the summer break and hope it's going to go well, and maybe not?
Yeah, well, you always have to wait and see, if the car performs different on different types of circuits, different compounds. So I feel there's still some circuits coming, that will be more suited for us. So looking forward to those.
Can I just ask you, how difficult were the conditions out there? Because even for the younger ones...
Yeah, very tricky because, it's a moving target. The circuit was changing, lap by lap. There was a dry line suddenly appearing here. The next corner was wetter though, and it was drying, then rain again. So, yeah, very dynamic session, very changeable conditions. So not easy.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jen. Speaking to Nico Hülkenberg, who will start the Grand Prix from 15th on the grid, which... better than his teammate, that's for sure. He's down in 18th, but Hülkenberg has a habit of out-qualifying his teammate. Just manages to get more out of that Haas car, which seems to be better in qualifying than it is in the race. Hülkenberg coming into this race was 9-3 in terms of head-to-heads. That now becomes 10-3 in Hülkenberg's favour. But last time out, he had a disaster of qualifying and hydraulic issues and started from the pit lane. So it's a better time here in the Netherlands for the Hulk, which is a bit of a second home. Well, it is his only home race, really, because we don't have a German Grand Prix, because he's only born about 2 kilometres away. Did you know that?
No?
Oh, there you go.
I love the facts that
Andrew
you
did,
bring
though.
to the commentary
Andrew
box.
was jumping
of
at the
course,
bit.
Of course, Andrew knows.
I only
knows
know
everything.
because Harry said it yesterday.
Oh, right,
He's so pleased with that statistic, he just keeps repeating it.
Well, exactly.
surprised he's not
Isn't that what
mentioned
commentary is? No.
I'm surprised he's not mentioned his fact about how tall the Dutch are.
Oh, no, we haven't had the tall Dutch, have we yet?
But
No.
see, even that, Alice, is just Harry showing off, really.
It is.
Yeah.
It is.
Well, for those of you who missed free practice chat, I will just clear that up for you. The Dutch are the tallest people in the world. On average, the men are about 5'11", 181 centimetres. On average, the women are about 5'6", 161 centimetres.
And how tall are you?
I'm about 195, I think, centimetres.
Showing off
She's
then.
about 6'5", I think. So, and Rosanna says she's quite tall. She's about 6 foot, isn't she? So,
I think you're underplaying Rosanna there. She was 6'1" easily.
I'm
wasn't she?
so
She's
sorry.
probably listening. She can tell
I'm
us.
sorry, Rosanna.
So-
Take it back. Take it all back. But we're feeling right at home here in the Dutch dunes.
You might be. I'm only 1.79, so I'm under.
You're
average
under.
height.
What,
yeah.
what are you, Alex?
I'm 5'6", so that means I'm an average.
You're bang on. Bang
I'm an
on.
average
Yeah.
height, for a Dutch person.
Well, we can head to Jenny, who I doubt is going to be bringing up some tall facts this time.
Well, I'm down here with Lance Stroll, just missing out. Lance, you must be a little bit disappointed. It was there, was it, that final part?
Yeah, for sure. It was there, but we were a little bit early on the last set of intermediates when the track was drying up. I didn't feel the tyre was really at its peak when we were on that last lap in Q2 when the track was in its best condition.
So what can you do tomorrow from there?
Maximum attack and try and score some good points.
It's crazy atmosphere. Do you feel it? Can you sense that in the car?
I can hear it in the garage. Enjoying the DJ for sure. It's a bit of a vibe in the car waiting in the garage.
That's good. Thank you very much. Do you want...
Jenny there, talking to Lance Stroll then, who...
And the producer.
I think she was going to say, do you want some facts? How tall are you?
Well, I can tell you how tall Lance Stroll is, 182 centimetres.
You're the man with the tall facts, aren't you,
I've
Harry?
got it. I can only do it here at the Dutch Grand Prix. And the red flag continues to
Lando
be
Norris is
out
falling
there.
asleep. He's not in with the tunes. I actually remember when I raced here in 2021 and there was a bit of delay and I absolutely
Did you have a
loved
nap?
the tunes.
Oh.
No, I was having a party
Get you
in my
pumped up
car.
for
I was
it,
getting the rave on. I was, as Fernando Alonso's having a sip of his drink. And Lando, as I said, is having a nap by the looks of it.
Fernando is not getting a rave on. You can just tell by looking at his face, can't you?
Absolutely not. He's got his eyes on the prize, that's for sure. Currently looking to put a first lap time on the board. He had a great middle sector before the red flag came out for Fernando Alonso. So we'll see what he's got left once we get back underway. And the session, we haven't had an official start time yet. It's been delayed. The restart has been delayed as the barrier repair works continue to take place. So that is the reason why we are not back racing yet, or back qualifying, I should say. The red flag being brought out fairly early doors due to the Williams driver, the American Logan Sargent, the rookie, getting into Q3 for the first time this season and on his second flying lap, coming into turn 2 in the approach of Hugenholtz, the left-hander banked corner, dipped a toe onto the wet track off the drying line, and that spun his Williams out of control through the gravel and into the barrier, taking quite a hefty hit on all sides really of that Williams. So that put him straight out. He's okay, he's out of the car and was talking on the radio. The car is being cleared, and I think from what we can see there's no more repair work being done on the barrier, so I'm hoping it won't be too long before we get the all clear.
16:11 session will restart. Yeah.
Thank you very much. So a few minutes time then before we get underway. The Mexican waves are in full force around the track, or the Dutch waves, I suppose. Will they be? No, I don't know. What's the technical term? No, we won't go down that road.
I'm still thinking about these tall facts. I was going to say, who's the tallest driver on the grid? That's got to be Esteban Ocon.
Esteban Ocon for sure. Alex Albon's quite tall though.
So is Nico Hulkenberg.
Yeah,
it's a tricky one.
We'll give it a Google. Or maybe everyone knows on Twitter.
Give me 2 minutes.
There was actually a game that F1 released on their social channels, wasn't there, over the summer break, where the drivers had to rank each other in order of height.
Yes.
I didn't watch it, unfortunately. I was too busy having a holiday.
I think Nico Hülkenberg is one of the tallest drivers. Certainly Yuki Tsunoda and Lando Norris are amongst the shorter of the drivers on the grid.
I think Yuki's got it over Lando by quite a long way.
Do you think?
Yeah.
I think so.
Yeah.
He's
Lando's
quite small.
Not tall guy, but he's not. I mean, he's shorter than me, but he's nowhere near.
Okay.
Not like sort of. I mean, Yuki Tsunoda is diminutive. He's the smallest Formula 1 driver I think I've ever seen. Maybe Ukyo Katayama challenges him.
Bring that out. Yeah.
Who's the smallest F1 driver you've ever seen? Not the
his
tallest.
name does not start with the same letter on each first and last name. Esteban Ocon and Alex Albon are the tallest drivers on the grid, 186 centimetres, which is 6'2". That is just ahead of George Russell, who was 185, and then comes Nico Hülkenberg, 184. So he's right up there, but it's Ocon and Albon. So if you weren't aware, you can jot that one down and tell your friends. Right, a couple of minutes left until we get...
We need
Are you not going to resolve the Norris-Tsunoda thing?
Oh, the Norris-Tsunoda... Well,
who's right, you or me?
If you really want the answer, the internet's quite slow.
Well, one of the...
I know. Don't you worry, I know.
One of the tallest drivers on the grid is now lining up at the end of the pit lane. Thank goodness for that, because that must mean that we're going to stop talking about tall and short people.
That's what you think.
We actually talk about race cars. Go on, you've
It is
Googled.
Yuki Tsunoda. It is Yuki Tsunoda. 5'2", 159 centimetres.
What's Norris?
You're asking me all these questions, Andrew, and
he's nowhere near that short, Lando Norris. I would say he's about 5'8",
really?
5'7", yeah.
Okay, well, we'll you know what? We'll bring you those answers as and when they come through in the next few minutes. So keep tuned to BBC Radio 5 Live for this qualifying session, which has turned into how tall are the F1 drivers?
Quite tall, isn't he?
Yeah, he said he was one of the. He's the second. Well, Albon and Ocon are the joint tallest, and then comes Russell. And then comes so Yuki Tsunoda is 159. He is one of the shortest drivers that there has ever been. And
Davidson,
Lando Norris.
Shorter one.
I can't find Lando Norris. I need to go and talk to him and see what he is. But the thing is, this is a bit of red flag filler chat. Okay, fine, you've got us, but height and size does really matter actually when you're a Formula 1 driver. The first time I ever went on a grid, I was kind of a little bit surprised because, I mean, everyone was so short. The drivers were in stature were so small.
And yeah, and the seats are moulded to them, as well as where the steering wheel moulds, etc. But yeah, trying to fit into a race car, it's not the most spacious. It is a Formula 1 car or a single-seater, full stop. So it is quite hard, and I know that some drivers have had issues when they've got big feet as well. So there's no chance for you, Harry, ever getting in a Formula 1 car with hitting the top of the tub. So the smaller you are, the better.
Well, Q3 is now underway. One man not taking part in it though. It's Lewis Hamilton. He's talking to Jen.
Yeah, he's just in front of me. Lewis, obviously disappointed, but you were blocked at almost every attempt. It seemed like. Was that a frustration?
It definitely wasn't great. It'll be interesting to see what comes of that. But I mean, there's a lot of blocking from people, so it'll be interesting to see if that's impeding. It shouldn't be allowed, really. But that wasn't why. I mean, I was in general just slow, just really, really slow today. And I can't for the life of me pinpoint what it is. But I mean, it is a balance thing on the car, and the car just doesn't seem to be working.
That's more frustrating than the impeding, probably.
Yeah, way more.
So what do you do tomorrow? Can you do anything to the car to make it better, to make it more drivable?
Can't do anything to the car. Just have to try and bring it home and try and get as many points as I can with what I have.
Tomorrow's going to be tough. Good luck.
We won't be winning.
We won't be winning. That's what Lewis Hamilton has to say then. So clearly it was traffic plus, just not quite happy with the performance that he was gaining out of that Mercedes. So he is not in Q3, second time this year that he's been eliminated in Q2. But we are back underway now after a red flag. So the height chat is over. Apparently Lando Norris is 177 centimetres and we'll leave it at that. Which everyone in the commentary box is perfectly disagreeing with.
100% not true.
Okay, hashtag BBC F1. Q3 underway. 6 minutes left after the red flag restart. Sainz straight on it. Everybody straight on it, in fact. So we will not have Sargent, but everybody else is out there. Albon, Sainz, Russell, Piastri, Alonso, Leclerc, Norris, Verstappen and Perez. The two Red Bulls just getting to the end of their outlaps as they wind up. And this is the fight for pole position for Sunday's Dutch Grand Prix. And at the moment, it's Alex Albon in the Williams who's sitting pretty at the top.
It is, and they say that it does dry quickly around here, and that certainly is true. Down a lot of the well, fairly straightish, I would say, parts of this circuit, it's pretty much bone dry now all the way across. Maybe through the chicane, there is that fine dry line, but what a difference a red flag makes as diving into the pits goes Alex Albon.
He does. I think he bailed out of it. Maybe he lost a little time in that final sector. This is the sound of George Russell coming round the final corner and onto the main straight, up through the gears. DRS now activated as he sets provisional pole by 3.1 seconds. So you can just see the rate of knots that the track has sped up since we started this Q3 session with the red flag interruption. Norris then immediately goes to the top by half a second with a 1:12.0. His teammate Piastri slots in behind, 2.5 tenths behind, or just actually 2 tenths behind his teammate Russell. Leclerc, Perez goes up into the top 5. Max Verstappen, DRS open, the rear wing flap is open to give the drag reduction speed, and it's only 4th fastest for the two-time champion, and just under 3.5 tenths clear, or 3rd fastest actually I should say, just ahead of Russell. So 3.5 tenths shy of Lando Norris's time. Russell 4th, Leclerc 5th. Yellow flag out in sector 2 at the moment. Not sure who that is. Currently Albon's in there. It's actually Charles Leclerc in the Ferrari, has pulled off to the side.
He's hit the wall.
Has he had contact with the wall? It looks like he has. We're currently seeing an onboard of him. Yellow flag then as he's moving inside the cockpit. He's taking off his gloves, and steering wheel has been unplugged, and that is the end for Charles Leclerc's qualifying, and that has brought out another red flag. So Leclerc then has had quite a bit of contact with the wall. There's bits of advertising hoardings scattered onto the grass where he has come a cropper, and we're just trying to work out where that is on track. It's in sector 2.
Looks like it's turn 8 to 9 possibly. I would say turn 9, so let's have a little of it. Yep, so it's there in turn 9, and he's just run slightly wide, and it's still dusty.
You okay?
Yeah, I am. Sorry, guys.
So it's dry roughly on the exit there, but it's so dusty. We've said yesterday during commentary that even though we've had we might get a bit of rain, which we have done, it's still going to be dusty when it eventually dries. And we saw good examples yesterday of people running wide on the dust, but that's just made Ferraris. I mean, I think they were having a bad day. I think they just about scraped into Q3, but that has just made it even worse, and not great for Charles Leclerc.
Another person who that's not great for, quite apart from Leclerc's teammate Carlos Sainz, who's 10th at the moment, was Fernando Alonso, who was on what was looking like a great lap. He'd just gone fastest of all in the first sector in the Aston Martin, and he had to abort because he was running behind Leclerc on track.
Yeah, session stopped then at 4 minutes and 5 seconds with Charles Leclerc out. So the best he could possibly hope for is 5th if it all stays the same. But I imagine the others will bolt on a new set of rubber and go again in the last closing stages of Q3 once we get back underway. Didn't look like there would be too much repair needed for the barrier at least, but certainly that Ferrari taking quite the hit. So work to do for the Ferrari team overnight to get that car ready for race day tomorrow. And especially after Leclerc, reading the riot act of Ferrari in Q2, and then suddenly it's his mistake that forces him out of qualifying. It's hard luck for the Monegasque racer, who is currently joint with George Russell for 5th in the drivers' standings as it currently stands. Carlos Sainz has made it back to the pits and is wheeled rearwards into the garage. So, Alonso, Sainz, Albon, Perez, they're all going to go again for certain, and in fact everybody is going to go again for certain. It's 2/10 between Norris and Piastri, so Lando Norris is sitting on provisional pole. Sargent we can rule out of this one because he's not involved anymore after the crash. I can't read this, Andrew.
Well, what I would do is remind you of what we were saying at the very beginning of the session. McLaren look absolutely competitive on one lap pace. I mean, Norris, Piastri and Verstappen, Russell and Leclerc all got a clear lap on soft tyres. We're going to see a replay of Leclerc's accident, Alice.
Yeah, so sweeping through into turn 8, you can hear the compression there, and he just turns in, and you have to be patient there. I always find, and from coaching around this circuit as well, that particular corner at turn 9 is one of the corners that has the least grip on the circuit. Doesn't matter if it's a hot day, doesn't matter if it's a cold day, and he's just tried to carry a little bit too much speed into the apex there, and you have to be patient with throttle, but he's just carried too much entry speed. He made the apex, but then sailed on towards the exit, and as I already mentioned, it's really dusty offline, and he was just a passenger then. As soon as he got onto that wet grass, there was no chance for him to save that.
Leclerc then walking away from the scene of the incident, his helmet's off. He's being escorted by some marshals back to the pit lane. Race controls say that Q3 will resume at 16:21 local time, which is in about 2 minutes time, just shy of that, as we finally get ever closer to figuring out who's going to start this race on pole position. If you are just joining us and are wondering who is 11th downwards on the grid, well, Stroll will start 11th, barring any post-race penalties, post-qualifying penalties, ahead of Gasly. Hamilton in 13th, in front of Tsunoda and Hulkenberg 15th. Zhou, Ocon, Magnussen, Bottas and debutant Liam Lawson going from 20th and last for tomorrow's Grand Prix. We're in the top 10 shootout, 4 minutes to set your quickest lap time and to fight for pole position. And right now, I think it's fair to say it is advantage McLaren, advantage Lando Norris. But Piastri is right there with him. Verstappen is a few tenths shy. And this is actually great news, because before coming into this qualifying session, we said, well, maybe the weather might be a little bit of a leveller for those behind Verstappen to challenge for qualifying. And as it's dried up, Verstappen's pace and the complaints right at the start of the session, not happy with the car, he's not sitting pretty as he normally does.
No, and I'm not even sure it's to do with the weather. The McLarens have been right there, wet or dry. It's now, although Leclerc's just gone off because he carried too much speed in, it's basically dry. They're running dry tyres. There's wet patches off the line, or damp patches, I should say. It's not puddles or anything like that. But fundamentally, we're running on a dry track now. And as I was saying earlier, Norris, Piastri and Verstappen, they all got a clean lap on their first set of tyres. And Norris is 3.34 seconds quicker than the world champion.
Well, back on the way then, as the tyre warmers are lifted off of Sergio Perez's tyres. Soft tyres are revealed, and he escapes from the garage and into the pit lane. So Perez eager to get out there as the first driver to find himself the gap he needs. Alex Albon in the Williams follows suit. And even though there are only going to be 9 cars on track, I wouldn't be surprised if there's some impeding going on coming into these final corners as everybody tries to get the best of the track conditions. It might well be last over the line as the track continues to get drier and drier and get grippier and grippier. They're all going to come through that 11-12 chicane and then start to back up as they try and find themselves enough space. Yeah, getting space is important. Ideally, you want to be at the front of the queue. If you do happen to have someone go wide or make a mistake and a yellow flag, that's the last thing you want, because you do have to show that you have at least slowed down, whether that be a lift. But that's important to make sure you get that track condition. The track is still a way off of what we saw last year. So Max Verstappen was on pole last year in dry conditions, a 110.3, and at the moment Lando Norris sitting at the top of the time sheet on a 112.0 as Max Verstappen comes out of the pits. He's decided to wait a little bit, but Oscar Piastri fancies following the current champion around as well, and out of the pits goes the only remaining Ferrari of Carlos Sainz. Yeah, let's see what Sainz can do. He was on a pretty, well, actually it was him and Alonso were on for some fast laps before Leclerc brought out the red flag. So they are a little bit on the back foot coming into these final couple of minutes. But really what? They'll get a warm-up lap, one fast lap, and then maybe one more fast lap after that. If that's going to be tight, if so.
Well, it is. It's going to be very tight. Verstappen, I think, is going to have to
might only be one.
Just one lap, yeah, because we've got under 2 minutes remaining, 1 minute and 45 seconds left to go. So he's literally just got one lap. So we're going to see no one peel into the pits now. This is it, Harry. This is the time. You've got to string it all together. They've had no dry running sessions at all today. So all the information and everything that they learned yesterday, they need to put into this final lap now.
Can Max Verstappen get an 8th pole position of the year? Can Oscar Piastri in the McLaren get his first ever pole position in Formula One? Could Lando Norris in the other McLaren get his 2nd career pole position? These are the questions that we are going to answer in the next minute as Max Verstappen slides through turn 1 to begin his final flyer as he makes his way towards turn 2. The right-hander, there is a full dry line now, only a few wet patches left off the line, but they're way off line. Makes his way through the left-hander of Hugenholtz, the banked corner, then through 4, 5 and 6 where it starts to get a little bit tighter, a bit like a roller coaster ride as it then takes you downhill. He's found over 7.5 tenths so far in the first sector as he makes his way towards the scene of where Leclerc crashed just moments ago.
Yeah, he is. A good lap, but Norris 8 tenths up, and it's purple in the first sector. So it's going to come down now to these final 2 sectors. And the sound of Max Verstappen that you can hear right now, he's coming into sector 3. 1 second, just over 1 second up now compared to Lando Norris as he runs using all the road available on the exit. The crowd absolutely cheering their home driver on. DRS wide open. He's going to bring it home and come across the line, surely into the 110s, is he?
He absolutely is, and he takes the checkered flag, and it's provisional pole for Max Verstappen as the crowd roars. But look to Lando Norris, blistering pace in Sector 1. He's lost a bit of time in Sector 2. He can't do it as he crosses the line, half a second down. Norris slides into 2nd. Piastri is in 3rd. Make that 4th as Sergio Perez puts the 2nd Red Bull in 3rd. 1.3 seconds off of his teammate. But what can Alex Albon do in the Williams? He rounds the final corner, DRS open, and comes across the line for Alex Albon in the Williams. It's 3rd on the grid for the London-born tie. Fernando Alonso in the Aston Martin is 4th. Carlos Sainz comes across the line in 5th. That puts Perez down to 6th. Make that 7th as George Russell takes the flag and just denies Albon a top 3 start as Russell gets into 3rd. But it's Max Verstappen who makes it back-to-back pole positions here in Zandvoort.
I mean, I'm putting my hands together for Max Verstappen, a very impressive lap. But Alex Albon, I mean, what a lap. 8 tenths off, okay, but
that is pole position. Wow, 6 tenths.
What a lap. Great job, guys. That was a good return from the holidays.
Well, Max, that was a mighty lap. Mighty lap in those conditions. Well done, mate.
Max Verstappen then once again on pole for the Dutch Grand Prix in his hometown. But I tell you what, Alice, Sergio Perez, 1.3 seconds off of his teammate, down in 7th. Not what the doctor ordered.
No, I mean, I was expecting him to come back and feeling a bit more recharged after, and I think we touched on yesterday, didn't we, during free practice, that the mental side plays a huge part in any sport. And Perez clearly not quite happy with his car as Max Verstappen stands aloft on top of his car and looking out of the grandstand, looking out of our commentary box window here. The Dutch fans, every single one of them, are on their feet and clapping and cheering for the pole man, Max Verstappen.
He celebrates with his team. He heads to the weigh-in. Verstappen then will start on pole for the Dutch Grand Prix. Lando Norris in second place in front of Russell. Albon, Alonso, the top 5. Sainz, Perez, Piastri, Leclerc, Sargent, the top 10, with Leclerc and Sargent both sustaining damage caused and causing red flags in these qualifying sessions. So lots of work to be done for the Ferrari and the Williams teams overnight. Stroll, Gasly, Hamilton, Tsunoda, Hulkenberg, the top 15. Zhou, Ocon, Magnussen, Bottas and Liam Lawson, replacing Daniel Ricciardo for the rest of the weekend, will start his first Grand Prix from 20th and last. Lando Norris equals his best start of the year so far with second place. George Russell, good to see him back on the second row of the grid. It will be back regaining some form. His best start actually since Australia. So George Russell then, who did look a little bit on the back foot coming into the weekend compared to his teammate, now though up in third. But we can hear though from our pole man, the one the Dutch fans all love, Max Verstappen, talking to David Coulthard.
Max Verstappen, pole position. There was a little bit of everything in that qualifying session, but in the end, a very impressive full half a second quicker than the second man.
Yeah, it was very tricky qualifying, starting of course with the intermediates, but also the track surface is quite slippery, the new tarmac. So yeah, it was all about putting your laps in, but also staying out of trouble. I think we managed that quite well, but then also at the end, when we could go on to the slick tires again, it was like one dry line in some places, and yeah, we had to risk it a bit, but that last lap was very enjoyable.
Yeah, the management between yourself and the race team there, getting you out on track. The only time it looked like a questionable decision was you went out on the intermediate when the track was just starting to dry and others had gone out on slicks. We heard you on team radio questioning.
Yeah, I mean, you know, we've been to some other places already where we've had wet races and stuff, and I think this was the first time we came here with, you know, this kind of conditions. So I think we underestimated maybe a little bit with the wind as well, and then the sun coming out, how quickly it dried. So it's again all about experience and lessons you take forward, but at the end of the day, it didn't matter. We still did the right thing.
We're obviously in your home country, a lot of support here. You've delivered stage 1, which is the pole position. It's been another fantastic crowd.
Yeah, I mean, the pressure is always there to perform, but when you can pull it off is incredible.
Max, congratulations on pole position.
Thank you.
And the man that's been pushing Max all weekend, it really did look like you had a chance in these changeable conditions. Second is still a great result for you.
Yeah, thank you. Good. Yeah, no, I'm happy still. P2 was a good result. I guess in these kind of conditions, every now and then you hope Max makes a mistake and he doesn't. So frustrating in a little way, but I'm very happy. The team done a good job. Was chaotic qualifying, but another P2, so good.
Yeah, you mentioned the conditions. It's really challenging when you know as the clock ticks down, you want to be one of the last across the line.
Yeah.
So how stressful is a changing weather condition qualifying like that?
Qualifying is always stressful, no matter what the conditions, but definitely now it's definitely trickier. Like the first half of the lap was mega. The second half of the lap was probably one of the worst second halves that I've done. So it peaked very early on, but it's tough. But I really enjoy these conditions. I've always enjoyed the conditions. It's when we do well. So I'm taking a P2 still.
When you say peaked very early in your lap, was that the tyres peaked or the driver peaked?
The driver. Tyres are good to the end. The driver peaked very early, so I got a bit of work to do. Just not the most comfortable, but good enough, so I'll take it.
Yeah, great P2. Congratulations.
Thank you.
And finally, our third place man, you kept us waiting right until the very end to pop that third place in. That was a tricky session, but you must be happy.
Yeah, absolutely. Really great session. Happy to be here in P3. Quali was one of my strengths at the start of the year, and it's just been going a little bit wrong recently. So it was good to have that break. Came in with a fresh set of ideas, good reset, and we're in a great place tomorrow to fight for a podium.
We heard Lando say there that he's owning the fact that he peaked too early in the lap. How was your lap overall?
Yeah, but that was okay, to be honest. It was. We know we always struggle when it's either very wet or it's the crossover onto slicks when we've got to get that temperature into the tyres. But we know the Saturday weakness is the strength on Sundays, so it's going to be an exciting race. I'm sure Max will be having his Sunday drive and waving to the crowd on his way tomorrow, but hopefully we can have a good fight with Alex, Lando, and the rest of the guys.
You mentioned Alex there. The Williams has been incredibly strong, but are you really looking one place back rather than one place forward?
Yeah, I'm really happy for Williams and Alex. I said before the session, I saw the guys on the pit wall looking pretty happy with their performance, and I flew over here with Alex and I said, what are your expectations for the weekend? He says, I think we're going to be rubbish. So he got that one slightly wrong, but as I said, really well done to Max, but also to Alex and Williams.
Yeah, well, congratulations on your third place. We'll see how the race goes tomorrow.
Thank you so much. Cheers.
There we go then, that's your top 3 for tomorrow's Grand Prix here in the Netherlands. Max Verstappen besting Lando Norris in the McLaren, who seemed to be a challenger throughout the weekend, and George Russell, P3 for the guy in the Mercedes. Is he going to be looking forwards, or is he going to be looking backwards at that incredible Williams of Alex Albon, showing so much pace right from the get-go here in Zandvoort? Sunny conditions now, but it could all change tomorrow. The Grand Prix gets underway at 2 o'clock. Plenty could happen between now and then. It's been an interesting qualifying session, very challenging on this old school and tricky track. Some drivers coming a cropper, the likes of Charles Leclerc, Logan Sargent. So will they all be able to keep it between the lines tomorrow, or will we have another stoppagey kind of race? It's all to play for tomorrow in the Dutch Grand Prix, with one man who seems to always be on top, Max Verstappen, the home hero. Can anyone stop him tomorrow? The lights go out at 2 o'clock and we'll be live on BBC Sports Extra at 5:02. My thanks to Andrew Benson, Harry Benjamin, Alice Powell and Jenny Gow asking the questions this afternoon. I'm Rosanna Tennant, and we'll join you again tomorrow from Zandvoort.